Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D. Brief. This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's arts
and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief, Detroit's arts and entertainment former podcast, now live stream. I'm your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
And I'm Becky Scarcello.
Here's the deal. If you're just catching us on Facebook for the very first time, this is a podcast. We've been doing this podcast for a couple of years now, focusing on everything that's going on in the Detroit arts and entertainment scene, from restaurants to museums to theaters to music to comedy, everything you can't go see right now. Basically. We've been talking about, right? And because of the pandemic, we are now doing it as a video live stream. And then we are also pulling the audio, putting this up. So the video live stream is happening at Tuesdays, 5 o'clock. You can watch us live, or you can watch it on demand later, or you can go subscribe to the podcast. You can even download the mobile app, the Debrief mobile app you can find in there. So lots of different ways to listen. What we've been doing since the start of the pandemic is every week we've been having somebody in the arts and entertainment scene come on, and basically it's been about how they've been adapting to what's going on, because things are changing very quickly. If you've read a newspaper or turned on the news, I'm sure you probably know, it seems to change every day and get a little bit more intense. And so we're watching how everybody's navigating, because it's a tough time right now in the arts and entertainment scene. So
absolutely.
How are you doing? How are you holding up? How was your week?
It was good. It was fine. I mean, I feel so much uncertainty all the time, so I just have to kind of keep centering myself.
I will say the days are starting to blur together now.
Oh, yeah, I know. I was much more in that space than you were. And you were like, no, it's Monday, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday. I'm like, okay, I'm glad you know.
I was fine. And then I would say about a week ago, I started losing the thread a little bit.
Yeah, I could sense a shift in you. Us doing these live streams has helped me have a bit more of a schedule, to be honest.
Has it good? Well, good. And of course, we're breaking that next week because I am going on vacation. I am going to a place that's far away from everything and everybody.
Yes,
and
perfect for you.
Has no internet and just going to unplug. So look, here's what is happening on today's show. We have Darren Shelton. He's the executive director of Planet Ant. Planet Ant is the collection of improvisational comedy and now stand-up comedy and other facilities there in Hamtramck. It's a legendary institution here in the Detroit area. And they've been doing a lot of really interesting things, because obviously they can't put shows on right now under the current circumstances. So we're going to talk to Darren about how they have adapted to what's going on in the pandemic. But we're also going to talk to him about the history, because it's fascinating. They've been around for, I think, almost 27 years at this point. And
great stories.
The other thing we should mention, we always at the end of the show do shout-outs. So we like to just recognize arts and entertainment organizations, or really anybody, whether it's a person, an individual, something who's doing something cool in the Detroit area. We like to let people know. If you have a shout-out, if you're watching this and there's somebody that you want to recognize, just leave it in the comments. You can watch this, of course, on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel, and you can just leave it there in the comments, and we will make a note. I will tell you this. I'm finding it easier to, we should do this in reverse, like not shout outs. I would have a much easier time if we could scold people.
Oh,
instead of doing shout outs.
What do you mean? Scolding people. Yeah.
Yeah. Because the FedEx location in Oak Park would be at the top of my list.
Oh, me too. Because a lot of my packages go through there, and it's kind of crazy.
They do. The problem is my packages don't go through there.
Well, right. They are supposed to go through there, and they often get hung up. And I just want to be like, hey, I'll ride my bike over and grab it.
I have had a package from Lowe's that's been sitting there for a week and a half, and I don't know what's going on. So
first world problems, Seth.
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, if there's somebody that you want to shout out, leave it in the comments and we will mention it at the end of the show. Let's talk to Darren from Planet Ant. He is the executive director of Planet Ant, the absolutely awesome facility that's there in Hamtramck. You guys do a lot of improv. You do a lot of performances, including stand-up comedy that you've got going on there, and classes as well. Welcome to the show, Darren Shelton.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. This is a super cool opportunity. I love what you guys do.
Oh, thank you.
And thanks for
me.
coordinating the buns.
Yeah, no, we talked. Seth, sorry, we talked. We didn't
shirts.
want to offend you because we have the ability for this. So we arranged it.
I don't. I've got my quarantine haircut.
We can tell you tried. You tried to get the top knot, and it's okay.
This is my Ripley from Aliens 3 haircut.
There you go.
All right, Darren, let's start here. For anybody who hasn't been over to Planet Ant, talk to us about what happens there, what the mission is, what it's all about, and walk us through each of the different buildings, because you've got a number of different buildings that do different things.
Yeah, totally. So right now we have with 5 spaces now, which we started as a black box theater. We started as a coffee shop. We'll get there. We have our Black Box Theater, which is our original space. That opened as a coffee shop in 1993, and there's a lot of history there, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point. But the theater is going. We do a theatrical season there every year. We do Monday Night Improv, which is the longest running improv show in the history of the world. Don't check that. And then in 2016, we set our eyes on the rental hall across the street. So we purchased that, which that space has now been converted into Ant Hall, which is our big 200 plus capacity performance venue. Ghostlight, which is our bar and music venue. And then the Independent Comedy Club, which is the 40-ish person stand-up comedy specific room in the back there. And then most recently, we also have over on Joseph Campo. It's not a public space, but it is another space that we use. It's called Planet Ant Studio, where we have a podcast recording studio, a rehearsal space, and then some classroom space there also for a training center. So we have so much going on over here. Well, not right now, but in general.
Yeah.
You're putting out a lot of podcasts these days. I see a lot of podcasts coming out.
Yeah, good ones.
It blows my mind. I can't even keep up. It's my job. We do. Mike McGettigan is the head of that whole side of things, the podcast and the live streams, and he's done a wonderful job. If anybody knows him, he's a humble dude, but he's an award-winning actor and director. And on and off the stage. But he, one of the things I love about Mike is he focuses on getting folks with new ideas in. So they have an incubator channel, an incubator podcast channel, in which somebody can come on with their idea and they can try a couple episodes, whether it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then from there, they learn what their podcast is going to become, and then that turns into a new podcast. And so lots of folks have taken advantage of that, and now in pandemic times, they've even taken it one step further and made it into a live stream, like many of us are doing. So it's a cool thing for sure.
Where did the name come from, Planet Ant?
Planet Ant. This is a deep cut that I'm one of the only people who knows this. What happened? Like I mentioned, Planet Ant started in 1993. So I was 3 years old. My parents, Ken and Connie, they were two of the folks who started the coffee shop in 93. And when they were trying to figure out what their look and aesthetic would be, my older sister, Alyssa, who she's now the owner of Bank Suey in Hamtramck, which operates as a community space and a bookstore. She had the idea. She had just gotten an ant farm, and she tried to convince my parents to put ant farms in the walls, and she wanted to call it Ant Planet. And I think it was kind of like a space filler that they just started calling it Planet Ant at that moment in time, because they didn't have anything else, and she had an idea, and then they settled on Planet Ant as the name. And then Mikey Brown was the first person who he's still around, but he's the first person who drew the ant logo on a napkin at some point in time, and then the rest is history. So Planet Ant was the creation of a 5-year-old.
It's perfect. It's
is
perfect.
the answer.
It fits for a lot of things that you guys do.
Yeah.
You've had a number of famous people come through over the years,
Yeah.
including one of your co-founders, right?
Yeah. So I little known fact is that I try to tell people is Mikey Brown, who I brought up already. He's the glue that kept this place together. He brought all the people. He connected the Second City folks. He connected the U of D fine arts students, which that's where Keegan was. Keegan Michael Key was there with Mikey, and Mikey and Mikey and Keegan and Larry Joe Campbell and a handful of other folks. They were working on a film that still exists to this day called Get the Hell Out of Hamtown. And they needed a central filming location. And Planet Ant Coffee Shop wasn't a good business. And they had after a short year and a half stint as a coffee shop, they decided to end that. But the space was there. Hal Soper, the founder, lived on the second floor, and he had the first floor was available. And so Keegan connected, Mikey connected the two of them, and they decided they were going to film this movie, Get the Hell Out of Hamtown, which it's credited as introducing Keegan Michael Key as that film. And they shot that film there at the what is now the Black Box. And then as a fundraiser about that, so that would have been 95, 96, I believe. And then after the fact, Keegan asked if he could do a play called The Praying Mantis as a fundraiser that Halloween after shooting. And from there, we've done a theatrical season every single year since that first Halloween '96. And yeah, kind of lots of folks have come through. As I was saying to both of you before we got on, it's cool because it's pretty hard to find a Detroit comedian or actor who got their start here that hasn't done something at Planet Ant, which is it's
incredible.
It's cool. It's a lot of fun.
I think
Did you ever consider doing anything else?
Did I
Yeah.
actually I got involved in a roundabout way completely. So I a little bit about me is I'm in recovery from addiction, which lots of folks around me know that. So I came back in 2012, 13ish, just trying to find a new community and a new job and all kinds of stuff. And I have a background in construction and building. And so I started doing side work, working on the theater, working on sets here and there. And like so many people who find themselves involved at Planet Ant, you get around these creative folks in their space. It's really, really hard not to join them. And it's such a collaborative space. All these productions and things we do are there's so much opportunity to take these ideas you have as an artist and turn them into something. So I got involved through that route. I started coming around. I started doing work here. And then I think about 4 or 5 years after that, I found myself voted executive director by our board when our founder retired. I was around as a child, and then I was not there for a bunch of time, and now it's my full-time job. So I'm lucky in that sense, for sure.
We want to talk to you about how you're navigating everything that's going on right now with the pandemic. But before we do that, we've got a trivia question for you.
Okay.
So we're going to get into that.
I'm so bad at trivia.
That's all right. So am I.
So is Seth.
Don't even worry
So
about
is
it.
Seth.
We got this.
And the reason we do this is because I am not from the area.
Cool.
I am not a native. Becky is. And so Becky's trying to learn me. She's trying to school me. So Becky, what have you got today? What's our trivia question?
Yeah, so something that most Detroiters look forward to this time of year is the fireworks. So that normally takes place on the last Monday of June. And it began.
Why is that, by the way? Why is it not on the 4th of July?
Well, so I'll tell you.
Oh.
It's part of the Windsor-Detroit International Freedom Festival is what it used to be called. So it's a friendship thing between Detroit and Windsor. So it was to commemorate both Canada Day, which is July 1st, and then our Independence Day, July 4th.
Oh.
And for some reason, they settled on the Monday before, but it's for both. So you couldn't have it on the 4th because it's a gift to Canada.
Got it.
So the fireworks are always one of the largest, most spectacular displays in North America. I mean, they're amazing. Like 1 million people watch them from both riverfronts. Of course, this year, it's going to be a little different. They are going to have the fireworks, but it's going to be TV only. So I don't know how this will work because it's happening, but I guess they'll have a lot of patrols and, making sure people don't linger around. But it's postponed till August 31st, 2020. You'll get to see it on WDIV Channel 4. But I wanted to ask you, my trivia question for you is, when did this Freedom Festival begin? What year?
When did the Windsor-Detroit International Freedom
Festival begin? When was the first one?
It was after 1776.
It was, and it was before I was born.
And so
and I'm pretty
before
old,
you were
so.
born, so it was before 1778.
Right.
So that leaves, by the way, if anybody's watching has a guess, feel free to leave it in the comments.
Weigh in.
Right.
And I have
of course,
I have a part 2 question too, so hurry it up.
Oh, there's 2 parts. When did the Windsor-Detroit International Freedom Festival begin? Darren, you have any idea? Has it been going on since?
I'm gonna here's a little quick improv lesson. When you need to buy time, drink pretend coffee.
drink. That's your way of saying I don't know.
I'm gonna guess. Can I guess?
Yes.
Yes.
57. I'm guessing 57.
Oh,
I'm gonna say
so close.
Yes, and 58. Is that how it works?
So close.
Yes, and 59.
Yes.
Oh.
1959.
So you beat me even if it was Price is Right rules. That sucks.
That's true.
1959 is when they started doing
Was the first one.
I'm really amazed at how close that shot in the dark guess
I
was.
had no idea.
So, and I believe that this will be the first year that the fireworks are not taking place,
Really?
at that time.
Wow.
But we're still going to have them, just August. So in 2007, the International Freedom Festival was no more, not that name. It was split into 2 festivals, one being the Windsor Summer Fest, and the second being what? What's the Detroit side?
Detroit Winterfest. Doesn't that make sense?
Not the winter.
Oh, wait. So there's 2 festivals happening on the same time.
Yes.
We broke up. Is that what happened? Why are we doing this?
No, we just decided to kind of own our each own festival, but the fireworks are still Detroit's gift to Windsor.
What?
This sounds like a Trump thing. Did he do this? Was this nice?
No, gosh, no.
Why do we it sounds like we split up.
2007.
It sounds negative.
It's not negative.
What?
All right.
I can't even think of any festivals right now. I can't think of anything.
Well, of
but
course, it's not happening this year. But what does the Detroit? So think about what happened in Detroit since then. The Riverwalk,
The Riverwalk went in.
the Riverfront Conservancy.
The Rensen went up.
what festivals are there?
Well, that was the 70s.
Mopop festivals there.
No.
The
Jazz Festival.
yeah,
You've been to it. Well, I don't know about you, Darren. but I
Electronic
know
Music
Seth-
Festival.
No,
The what?
Oh,
not movement.
Not
It's
movement.
something in June.
What the I did go to. Didn't I see Morris Day and the Time at this?
You did.
What the hell's the name of that festival?
Yeah, I can't think of it either. I'm pretty
It's,
sure like Blue Oyster Cult played one year at this
Yes.
festival.
And it downpoured the year that I went. We had to take out these
Yes.
giant yellow ponchos
So water.
Wa-
It's
the
on
Detroit-
the
on the waterfront.
Waterfront, water,
Right.
river walk, river
Ah!
water. Chat, help us out, chat.
Somebody in the comments, help us out.
I know, really.
Somebody else. Matt Kirsch. Hi, Matt.
Oh, hey,
The
Matt.
High Friends Fest.
Matt, save us.
the HIGH friends.
What is the
Fest.
name of this?
Yeah, right.
What is the name of this festival?
Do you want
I've
me
been
to
to
tell
it.
you?
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Detroit River Days.
That's what it is.
River
Ah,
We
River
saw
geez.
Morris
Days.
Day in the
Knew
time
it.
there. We went down. It was dumping rain. It was raining so bad that all the rides had stopped. I talked, there were like 20 people in the whole thing. I talked one of the operators into giving us 30 tickets, that we could barely use to get up because there were like 3 rides operating. But
I'm pretty sure one year Blue Oyster Cult started one song and then like something happened and they canceled their set at that festival. I'm pretty
I
sure.
don't remember it. I trust you. I don't know.
maybe there's a curse. Who knows?
Maybe there's the River Days curse.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I mean this year it's not happening, but it seems like if they could arrange it to rain the day it was supposed to happen, then that would be natural, like
Yeah.
social distancing.
They
So,
wouldn't feel so bad.
right. I don't know.
We have on the live stream with us today, Darren Shelton. He is the executive director of Planet Ant. If you've never been to Planet Ant, you should absolutely go when it reopens.
Mhm.
It's an amazing collection of facilities where they do all sorts of things. I've taken a clowning class at
Yeah.
one point at the Black
Oh, yeah.
Box Theater.
It
I've been there
shows.
for the thanks. It was actually really cool, the things that they taught you how to do with your body. I mean, I wasn't very good at it, but it was amazing. Lots of improv coming out there. You've got the independent comedy club that has been there for what's a little over a year now.
A little over a year. Yeah, I think it was. I think it's a year and a half now. In theory,
I saw Josh Adams' last show in Detroit right up until
Yeah.
he had to come back to Detroit because of everything going on there.
Mhm.
That's a special place, right? Because it's run by the comedians.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's wonderful. I mean, it is that whole group of it. So essentially, what happened to me? There was a group of about 7 comics / producers who ran various bar shows around town here and there and whatnot. They, they like most performers, they were tired of doing bar shows where they were kind of the backup, the filler. Like so many comics and performers are used to doing that stuff. I don't know. Bart Dangus is he's really the one who came to me. He's a good friend of mine now. But Bart Dangus and Brett Mercer and Johanna and also Jason Brent, a good group, a core group of people. They had this idea, and we had this back room that we were using as a training center, classroom, a rehearsal space. And they saw this room, and they really said, we'll run it. We'll run it. We'll book it. We'll stick to it. We'll and they did. I kind of laid out to them. I said, here's what we need. Here's the commitment we need from you guys. Here's how the finances have to work out and all that stuff. And it was a really, it was kind of a match made in heaven. It worked really, really well. They got the freedom and the focus that they need. We occupied space, got new people in the building, and one of the things from somebody whose background's more improv than stand up, it's tough to get those two communities to overlap, and they don't realize that they're doing the same thing most of the time.
Right.
There's a lot of like stand-up comedy shows that are essentially just improv shows. One I think of a lot, that a show that I love is Truth. The show Truth. They have a podcast, Truthcast. Their live show. They essentially, what they do is they get these folks to come on their show with some conspiracy theory character.
Yeah.
And it's Mike and Alex run that show, and they create a slideshow that their guests brought with them, quote unquote, brought with them, and then the guest then justifies the slideshow that's behind them on stage. And they're folks more in the stand-up world, but us improvisers know that's an improv game called slideshow, and it's not that far off. And I'm when talking to improvisers, I try to explain to them the value of having scripted experience and sketch comedy experience and stand-up experience, because that timing is everything. But then the other side of that is you can see a stand-up comic with improv experience right off the bat, because there's nothing that can shake them. I mean, there's no heckler. They can adapt on the fly. And so these skills are while zoomed in, they're very different. If you zoom out, they're all just solid baseline tools for comedy, which I think that folks are starting to really see in this community, the value of having experience in both of those worlds. And also they're learning that if you pool your audiences, you'll get bigger audiences,
Right.
which is also another good one. So I'm really proud of that group. It's been a pleasure to work with all them, and some of them have grown to be some of my best friends as well, which is always great to meet new friends in the world.
So speaking of adapting and doing things on the fly, tell us about what you've been doing, to
Yeah.
adapt to COVID times.
It's tough. It's tough to figure out what to do. At first, just like anybody else. So I'm going to take you back to the first week of March right now. We had just received a pretty significant grant from Michigan Humanities to put on a Planet Ant original show written by Mikey Brown and Sean Hanlon called The Detroit Musical. It's our most ambitious show ever. To follow up the Detroit Public Theater's production of Hedwig and the Angry Inch in our space. We set the bar really high. It's our biggest budget show, set to open on March 13th, which, as we know, is the day that the national emergency was declared, which is the day that we made the hard choice to pull the plug on this show.
On opening night.
Yeah.
We got one performance in. We did a surprise preview show on Thursday. So we at least got one performance under our belts. But it got to the point where, so like that Monday and Tuesday of that week, we had sold like 80 tickets or something like that. And then that Wednesday and Thursday, not only did we not sell any tickets, people were started their requests and they're saying for refunds, saying they're not coming. So, overall we didn't want to risk it for the cast, the crew. We, with the grant, we were on the hook for 12 performances no matter what. So there was no way we were going to do the second weekend at that point in time. So we would have had to come back later anyway. So we made the decision to pull the plug. But like I was saying off the air, by opening night, 90% of the money is spent.
Right,
we had our first ever billboard for a production. We had radio spots. We had thousands of dollars in marketing alone. I have boxes of Detroit musical shirts and swag and all this stuff here that we're gonna luckily we're gonna do the show eventually. But so we kind of we were banking on that as being a pretty successful show. So we were left with this show completed, all 5 of our spaces grinding to a halt, pretty precarious financial situation. But we were, I like to always point out that our community is amazing. Our community, we're one of the lucky places in town that we're not just a venue. We're more of a hub, and we have folks who are dedicated. And right away, I got a text from Tim Robinson, and he said, "How can I help?" And I said, "Honestly, we need some money. Yeah. Can you mobilize the alum out in LA and see what we can do?" And they made some donations. Sam and Tim did, and some other folks.
Detroiters cash.
The Detroiters cash. They also they use their poll to post a lot, and they really a lot of our local folks and national folks made donations through the website. Also, folks bought a lot of merch and shirts and stuff like that, and we have gift cards for sale on the website, so people bought essentially pre-bought stuff for in the future, which was great.
When you say national folks, there are people there are improv communities out in Los Angeles and other places that are former Detroit.
Right. And so one of the things, if you're an improviser, one of the things, people think like, what is the ceiling on an improviser? Like, where do improvisers go? And a lot of folks don't realize that like your improvisers are your folks on your voiceovers on your Bob's Burgers, or your cast, your small cast parts to big cast parts on your shows, your sitcoms. I mean, like, look at shows like any of the Michael Schur shows like The Good Place and the Parks and Rec and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, all of those folks are improvisers from the various different improv theaters around the country. And lots of them have foundations, with IO, with Second City, with and lots of those folks that get to the big improv theater levels, they start, if they're not from New York or Chicago or LA, they start at some improv theater in a different city. So like, Planet Ant and Go Comedy and Pointless are the ones around here. But those folks, essentially the route most of the time or historically has been, you start at an improv theater, you get a troupe that has some steam, you go to the improv festivals and you do, eventually you get those auditions and you go out and you try to get on some TV shows or you try to get a podcast that has some legs here and there. So, there's lots of folks around the country who have ties to Planet Ant in one way or another. Either they've come here for Detroit Improv Festival, which that's run out of Go Comedy over there. But there's, again, it's in this comedy community in Detroit, there's a ton of overlap everywhere. And we have friendly, like Planet Ant and Go has a friendly rivalry, but we all love each other. And we'll we work with each other and all that fun stuff. But it's these people go out in the world, and you get a strong little LA base. Like Planet Ant's got or Detroit comedy has a bubble in LA. So there's Keegan, there's Josh Funk is over there at Second City LA. He was one of the founders of the Planet Ant home team here. Nancy Hayden, she's now she was at Second City LA, but she's now over. She just recently got a new job in Second City Chicago, but she's another one that's a founding member of our home team improv troupe. So it's tough to list everybody without forgetting a million people, but
so things stop down and you're able to get some monetary help,
right?
And then what
Right, yeah. So our question was, what's our role, right? What is especially you combine the pandemic with now protests for justice, and what is the role of a nonprofit organization who primarily is there for entertainment and to make people laugh. The difficult question is how you can't really jump on this stuff and make jokes about it right now. Not in the way that we have in the past. So we met and we talked and really what we decided at our administrative level and at a board level is that our job right now is to try to elevate the voices in our community and to kind of use that as a pretty loose guideline on what we're going to do. So instead of saying, hey, here's a bunch of Planet Ant stuff, support Planet Ant, it's, hey, here are members of our community and here's what they're working on. And how do we use our platform to send the people who trust that Planet Ant will provide them with reliable resources in entertainment and satire and sketch comedy and infotainment in one way or another. So our role, we view, is to find ways to facilitate that. So like I mentioned earlier, a lot of that right now has come in the form of echoing voices, but also helping folks who want to take a podcast to a live stream, helping them out with the infrastructure that we have we've developed over here. And it's not we kind of, somebody's got an idea, we have prepared, a Google document folder of all the resources you need. It's like, hey, here's what you need, here's what you have, download these programs so you can do this off of your computer. And then we are helping people with their tech issues. We're helping people just by echoing their shares and scheduling things as a collective rather than everybody doing the same thing at 8:00 on a Tuesday. We've kind of worked with everybody to establish a schedule. for live streams, and at the same time, we're working behind the scenes on some other cool projects that I can't totally announce yet, but we're utilizing our spaces right now for some things that will be filmed and some collaborations I'm really excited about, and I wish I could I wish I could spill the beans on them right now.
Me too.
So there's stuff going on in our spaces starting next month, privately filmed stuff that we're looking forward to. But those will be so we're trying to think of different ways to we're not going to get 200 people in the hall for a comedy show anytime soon. And we're not going to, I don't know when we're going to need to program 3 8 p.m. shows like Black Box Hall Independent at the same time. I don't know when we'll have the audience to do that again.
Is there any talk about that? I mean, do you know what phase you're in? Have you talked about what it would look like or what percentage of capacity?
We operate on some pretty thin margins already.
Right.
It's tough to get people to spend the amount of money that we need them to spend on a ticket just to break even. In our nonprofit arts stuff, essentially, our model on a lot of the more artsy stuff is to try to break even on the production and survive on the grants and the merit of the artistic integrity and the traffic that brings to the bar and to the training center. That being said, the idea of doing a show at 25%, I don't know who's going to pay $54 a ticket or something like that. The equations just don't really work out. So,
not to mention the audience feel would just be odd. Not as enjoyable.
We had talk of the idea of, okay, what if we took, normally we would have 35 people in the Black Box for an improv show, which that's crammed and it's great. And it's great when everybody's laughing and having fun and there's people everywhere. But and then we thought, okay, we could set up 40 chairs in the 200 seat hall spread out, but you lose what makes it special when you try to transcribe that. And also you would have to charge a lot more money to even make any sense financially. And even then, you have no idea who's going to actually show up.
Yeah.
So, we've put our head down. Myself and Andy Maziar is our director of development, and some other members of the team. We've put our head down and we've, I can't even explain to you the number of emergency financial support grants and loan applications and stuff like that. And we've been lucky enough to have received some support. So we're in a position right now that we have the ability to hold. We're not out of the woods. We're not comfortable by any stretch of the imagination, but we can hold for a while. And I'm not trying to be super crude, but we don't need to be the first across the minefield right now. And
I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's
hard. Yeah. And I feel bad for those, like I was saying, I feel bad for businesses who aren't nonprofits. I feel bad for the people who can't get these emergency grants. I feel bad for people who have to choose what to me looks like the safety of patrons over financial security or financial security over safety. And I can't pretend to know what goes through a business owner's head when making that decision right now. Cause I'm not a business owner with a family that relies on income from Planet Ant. I'm a single dude who lives alone, and I'll be okay. I can tighten my belt and I'll have groceries and I'll be fine. I can't pretend to know what goes to the head of somebody who their business is their family's well-being. And that's a hard place to try to put yourself and to try to understand. And we're fortunate enough at Planet Ant right now that we have the ability to be relevant and engaging in our community while having our doors closed. And I think more than anything, that's a testament to the community that we have, the community that has decided that Planet Ant is their home. I like to think that Planet Ant has done some things right to earn that community. But at the end of the day, as a nonprofit arts organization, we are the community that shows up. I mean, here, my job is quite literally listen to the people that are here at this, this publicly owned nonprofit,
Well, and you work with creatives, so who better to be able to think of innovative ideas, and they're used to hustling. They're used to scrambling.
Crazy. It's such a foreign idea to a lot of businesses. It's just like, give artists the means to do what they care about, and they'll blow you away every time. And it's just, I mean, it's not, I think that we get far too much credit for the artists that call this place home. I think that, there's something to be said for artists when they're doing things they care about. But there's what's really, really amazing to see is when one artist shows up with an idea that they care about, and you watch it bounce between these groups of 4 or 5 people who have similar ideas, and it just turns into this collaborative piece of brilliance. And it's amazing to see, and I get to see it front row time and time again, even right now, to see people figuring out ways to do that in these pandemic times, in these quarantine times, in these protest times. It's unbelievable, and I'm lucky to be where I'm at to help with that.
So you mentioned that in addition to the pandemic, in addition to the recession, we've also had these protests. Has that impacted the art that's coming out of Planet Ant at the moment?
It has impacted. So Sadie's a friend of Debrief. Sadie Qualiotto. Sadie's our marketing director, and she and I have had some real heart-to-heart conversations about what is our role. What is our role right now? It's difficult because as a nonprofit, we've people don't often believe me when I tell them this, but we don't take outright stances on many things, and like many organizations, we will do very left-leaning political satire, sure, but that's born of somebody's creation. It's not Planet Ant saying we are a liberal organization. It's again, our community showing up, we're amplifying what they're saying. So I'm glad day one of this, we were all on the same page. It's immediately Black Lives Matter. It's immediately, this is a stance to take. It's immediately, I think there was we spent a while trying to figure out what the statement coming from Planet Ant is going to be. And that was one of question. I think the wording we ended up landing on is we don't know what to do. Here's something we're going to do. We're going to forward our donations for this extended amount of time to Detroit Justice Center to support these people. And we're going to pivot from marketing our own stuff to amplifying voices that our community, voices from our community. And that has been, I think that's I think we made the right choice there. And it's made me very proud to see our community take advantage of our platform. We reached out to a lot of folks who are regulars in Planet Ant stuff, and we said, we're going to amplify. We are going to try to elevate everybody's voice that we can that is saying something passionate right now. And so we've taken a turn of if you look at Planet Ant's Instagram stories and stuff, I mean, Sadie's doing a wonderful job. She's getting out there. She's finding ways to promote Detroit businesses, Detroit causes, Black Lives Matter, all kinds of stuff. So again, I think it's just realizing what we are. We are not here to tell people what to do specifically. What we're here to do is listen to our community and amplify. We are a platform for them.
I appreciate that storytelling element, that it's like from the source, first person, just listen to people, listen to their stories, and then go forward.
And internally also, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done in every organization right now. And I think that that's super important. And I think it's important to realize that, like, I would argue that Planet Ant's often on the right side of things, but we're not always on the right side.
Right.
We've made a lot of mistakes. We've made, just like anybody else, we need to put our foot down and say, we are going to be anti-racist moving forward.
Right.
And that's a stance that needs to happen. It's not enough to just condemn racism. It's not enough to think, oh, we try our hardest, so we're fine. We're okay. We have no looks in the mirror that we need to take. I mean, at a board
important conversation that's happening. This isn't just about police.
Yeah.
And it's not just about a few statues. And
Right.
I think, you're right. Even in the field of comedy, we've seen it recently. We're starting to see videos surface from Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or old 30 Rock episodes, and all of a sudden people rethinking things that they might have done in sketch comedy or other types of comedy.
And it's the artists are often the first voice to really take shots at structures, whether it's comedy or whether it's dramatic or whether it's satire, whatever it is. I mean, there is I think there's a responsibility for artists to have these conversations. I think that they digest. I think that our responsibility as creatives is to find a way to digest and present these really complex social ideas in the form of dramatic theater, in the form of song, in the form of comedy, in the form of satire. And it is important to realize that people are going to get it wrong. They're going to get it wrong. And a lot of times people get it wrong with the best intentions, but they still got it wrong. And they still need to say, hey, I made a mistake here.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to do the right thing and I didn't do the right thing. And that's an important step that we forget. Especially at this level of creativity. I mean, a lot of people at Planet Ant, they're anywhere from this is their first thing to do on stage to I'm a weathered actor in Detroit. I mean, there's a huge range of experience, and people get it wrong often, and people get it.
I've seen that in stand-up comedy when I would go out to do open mics. I have to imagine it's the same thing in improv comedy where when you're new and you're young and you're stupid and you're going out and you're feeling the boundaries for the very first time. It is very easy to get up on stage and get a laugh, not because you're funny, but because you're shocking. Yeah.
I mean, and there's, I can remember my very first improv scene in which I tried to bring up a satire of a hot button issue without understanding how to do it. And I remember that those 3 minutes were the longest 20 hours I've ever spent on stage, because you have to make those mistakes in order to realize that they're mistakes. And I can tell you right now that in that specific instance, I know I went into that scene with the best intentions, but I didn't know what I was doing. And people forget that that's, in an open mic open mic stand-up comedy thing, or in a amateur improv guest troupe or something like that. It's going to happen. People are going to flub the well-intentioned satire they're trying to do. But that doesn't get rid of the fact that you made a mistake, and you got to figure out how to, you're going to have hard conversations about it. And sometimes it's as important as, hey guys, I messed up. I'm sorry I put us in this position on stage. And sometimes it needs to be a formal apology from the producer of the show or whatever. I mean, there's the point is, it's not I made a mistake. Oh, let's move on. I think that's where we're getting finally, which is great.
Hopefully we're having those hard conversations.
Yes.
We're going to do one more thing before we get out of here. And that is we're going to give some shout outs. Darren, this is something that we like to do at the end of every show. We just like to recognize either folks or organizations in the Detroit area that are doing something really, really cool. Becky, let's start with you. What have you got?
Yeah, so we've got restaurants opening, and, it's tricky how many people you can have in there, the relationship to your staff, all those kinds of things. So I just wanted to give a shout out to somebody who's taken a lighthearted approach, and they've been getting a lot of accolades for it. It's a restaurant in downtown Royal Oak called Trattoria da Luigi. And we've been going there for years. It's an old, like a rustic Italian place, family owned. So what they decided to do, instead of taking out tables to limit the capacity, they filled the table seats with ghosts. So they have
Ghosts aren't real.
Well, these might change your mind. So they're life-size white sheets. Some have mustaches, some have glasses. So there's ghosts at every other table. So when you go in there, you don't feel so like weird and alone in a half-empty restaurant. And last week they were featured on the Today Show.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think in a situation like that, you got to be very careful to make sure that those ghosts look like ghosts.
Yeah.
Because people with white sheets could be a bad play right now.
That's a good point. Only you would have to bring that.
What do you mean only me? Have you turned on cable news?
No, but I mean, here our little debrief show. You got to bring me down. But
All
so
right.
shout out, and that was the owner's wife's idea. So I love it.
Nice. What about you, Darren? Anybody you want to give a shout out to?
I want to shout out a podcast that it is in the Planet Podcast Network, but I want to shout out Mask Off Podcast, which is Fridays. They're live streaming Fridays at 9 p.m. It's 4 black men, Daniel Jackson, Anthony Coates, Malachi Lee, and Jacob Russell. And they're out there. They get on this platform and they are having hard conversations with lots of people, and they find a way to bring it back to love every time. And they go places conversationally that lots of folks watching need to see people have these conversations.
Give me an example of something you've heard recently.
I mean, they week 1 of protests, they put on a show, very angry, sad, all over the place. And they simply tried to started from a place of trying to express each of their individual emotions and how they feel about George Floyd, about protests, about race in this country, about the big picture, about history. And it was incredibly powerful and moving. I would recommend anybody go watch that show. That specific one's on YouTube, Mask Off episode 6. Watch that show if you want a perspective fresh early on in the protests. And I mean, it's hard to explain, but they get there every Friday, and it's an amazing show. It really is an amazing show, and I couldn't be more proud that Planet Ants involved in any way, shape, or form with that. So I mean,
they've been doing a great job on their social media too, and highlighting a lot of things. And that episode you're talking about, I just teared up.
I would be hard pressed to find somebody who watched it that didn't tear up, because there were moments of just
it's raw real,
emotion, but very well formulated. It was I can't imagine the strength that it took from each of those folks who I'm happy to call my friends on that show. So I would shout them out, and I think that they're going to keep doing that every week. So I would encourage everybody to check it out. It's a way to engage in conversations. They're super welcoming to anybody. They're super welcoming to any questions anybody has. It's a wonderful show. So check that out.
All right. I want to give a shout out as well. I'm going to give my shout out to the winners of the 42nd annual Michigan Emmy Awards. They were announced on Friday. This, of course, is the Emmys that happen at the state level. A lot of this stuff is news, and there's a lot of Detroit journalists and organizations in there. But there's a couple that I want to call attention to in particular. Winning the best historical or cultural program or special was Ivory Tree Media and DPTV. Detroit Public Television, for a special that they aired back in December called Orchestral Hall, a Centennial Celebration, Silence and Sound. So we've been talking about this. This is 100 years of Orchestra Hall this year, and this really dove into that. So if you want to learn more about and it's an amazing building. Like, we know that. We've talked about that on the podcast before. If you want to learn about that, you can find that over at dptv.org. You do need a DPTV passport in order to watch that, but you can. Something that you can just watch for free. In fact, we'll post it on the website, is the best commercial single spot that went to Octane Design and Visit Detroit. for the commercial that, again, we've talked about here on the podcast before. Detroit, One Nation Under a Groove. So this is the one where they got school children, and they all basically did a choir did a cover of George Clinton's and P-Funk's One Nation Under a Groove, all from different locations throughout the Detroit area. It's amazing if you haven't.
Yeah, tons of Detroit musicians are in there too.
Yeah. So shout out to everybody who won the award, but those two in particular, you should go see if you get an opportunity. Darren Shelton, Executive Director of Planet Ant, thank you so much for joining us. It's great to have you on the live stream. People can follow you, of course, if they want.
Yeah, I'm at the most Darren on all the social medias, but more importantly, support artists. I mean, that's the plug I have. Your artists are not only are they without stages right now, but they're hungry to do stuff. Their live streams are taking off. They're trying to do all that. Just if there's an artist out there, you have a friend artist or something like that, check in on them, support their stuff. I can't even explain to you the value of just a like and a follow and a share on somebody's digital project. It's super free. It's super easy to do. If you're scrolling your Facebook and you see somebody doing something, hit that like button. They will thank you, and it helps them a ton.
Nice.
And everybody can follow Planet Ant's social media as well, because you've been sharing a ton of those things.
Totally.
Like the schedule of live streams you talked about.
It's just at Planet Ant Detroit, Planet Ant DET, at Planet Ant DET.
Awesome.
So
cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being here. Until next week, again, we do this now every Tuesday at 5:00 is the live stream. And then on Wednesday, if you just want to hear the audio, you can still hear the audio as part of the podcast. Until next week, Detroit's moving.
Keep up.
The D-Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.
Yay.